She didn't fall in love with him all at once. She fell in love in pieces. The first piece was silence. The building was never quiet. Even early in the morning, it breathed, air vents humming, distant footsteps, doors opening and closing like the place itself was always awake. She had learned to move with that noise. To let it pass through her. To not react when someone raised their voice behind her. That morning, she was cleaning the lobby floor, long before the city fully arrived. The marble was cold through her gloves. The smell of disinfectant lingered in the air. She was almost done when someone stopped beside her cart. She didn't look up right away. People usually didn't stop unless they wanted something. A correction. A complaint. A reminder that she was in the way. She prepared herself to apologize. But no one spoke. The pause stretched longer than it should have. So she looked up. He wasn't in a hurry. Didn't glance at his phone. Didn't sigh. He was just standing there, hands relaxed at his sides, like he had time to spare. "Do you need more time?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. Not "Why are you still here?" Not "This should already be dry." More time. She nodded slowly. Yes. Just a minute. He didn't argue. "Take it," he said. Then he stepped back, giving her space, as if the floor, and her presence on it, belonged there. When he walked away, she noticed her shoulders had dropped. Just a little. She learned who he was later. Not from him. From the way conversations quieted when he entered a room. From the subtle shift in posture, back straightening, smiles tightening. From the way managers suddenly became attentive. Someone whispered it near the elevators. "That's the CEO." The words settled differently than she expected. She replayed the moment in her head. His calm voice. The lack of urgency. He hadn't spoken to her like someone important. And that unsettled her more than if he had. After that, things changed, but never all at once. Her schedule shifted. Nothing dramatic. Just fewer double shifts. Just mornings that didn't start quite as early. Tasks that used to land on her desk quietly disappeared. Not reassigned with explanation. Just, gone. At first, she assumed it was a coincidence. Coincidences were easier to trust. But then there were the moments she couldn't explain away. A supervisor who paused mid-sentence, then changed their tone. A mistake that should have cost her a warning, quietly corrected without her being called in. And sometimes, him. Not always talking to her. Sometimes just passing by. A nod. A brief morning. He remembered her name. That was the second piece. They didn't flirt. They didn't linger. When they spoke, it was brief and unremarkable to anyone watching. "How's the day going?" "Busy." "I thought so." But he listened. He didn't multitask while she spoke. Didn't rush her to finish. When she mentioned being tired, he didn't offer advice. Didn't tell her to work less, sleep more, be grateful. He just acknowledged it. That kind of attention felt intimate. Dangerously so. Because she wasn't used to being seen without being evaluated. She started recognizing his presence before she saw him. The way the air in the room seemed to settle. The way people adjusted themselves unconsciously. Sometimes, when she was finishing up late, she'd catch him nearby, reviewing something on a tablet, standing quietly, never making her feel watched. Once, he asked how long she'd been working there. She told him. He didn't react. Didn't comment on how long that was. Didn't ask why she hadn't moved on. Just nodded, like he was filing the information somewhere private. She wondered why that mattered to him. She wondered why she cared. At home, she found herself thinking about him at odd moments. Not the idea of him. The details. The way he paused before responding, like her words deserved space. The way he never touched her arm when passing, even by accident. She told herself it wasn't romantic. This wasn't a story where people crossed lines. This was just kindness. But kindness, she had learned, wasn't free. Not in her world. One evening, she stayed late to finish a section that wasn't technically hers. The building had emptied out, leaving behind that echoing quiet that made everything feel larger. She didn't hear him approach. "Still here?" he asked softly. She turned, startled. "Almost done," she said quickly, already bracing for disapproval. He looked at the floor. Then at the time on his watch. "You don't have to stay for this," he said. She hesitated. "I know," she replied. And she meant it. But she stayed anyway. He didn't insist. Just nodded, the way he always did, like he trusted her judgment. That trust felt heavier than any order. As she walked home that night, the city lights blurred into one another. She realized something that made her slow down. Her life hadn't changed because he demanded anything. It had changed because he made things easier. Smoother. Safer. And for someone who had spent years surviving by staying small. That kind of ease felt like being chosen. She didn't call it love. Not yet. But somewhere between the silence he gave her and the space he never crossed, something inside her had already begun to shift. She started noticing the distance between them. Not the emotional one. The physical one. How he always stood just a little too close for a conversation that wasn't personal. Not close enough to touch, but close enough that she was aware of him. Aware of his warmth. The quiet steadiness of his presence. When he spoke, his voice dropped slightly. Not intentionally. Just enough that she had to lean in. That was new. She told herself it was nothing. But her body didn't believe her. The first time their hands almost touched, it felt louder than it should have. She was handing him a folder, one she shouldn't have been responsible for in the first place. Their fingers brushed. Just briefly. He pulled back instantly. Too instantly. "Sorry," he said, though she wasn't sure who he was apologizing to. Her pulse took longer to settle than the moment deserved. She avoided his eyes after that. Not because she felt embarrassed. Because she felt aware. Their conversation stretched. Still quiet. Still restrained. But no longer just polite. He asked where she was from. She hesitated before answering. Not because it was a secret. But because once she said it out loud, she felt exposed. As if telling him placed her more firmly in the role she had worked so hard not to think about. He listened carefully. Didn't ask questions that would turn her story into a tragedy. Didn't praise her resilience. He just said, "That must have taken courage." No one had ever described her life that way. That was another piece. She began timing her breaks around his schedule. Not consciously. Just, instinctively. Sometimes he was there. Sometimes he wasn't. On the days he wasn't, the building felt colder. Sharper. More honest. She hated that she noticed. One evening, rain caught her by surprise. The city darkened early, glass reflecting lights that looked too expensive to belong to her. She was waiting near the exit when he appeared beside her. "Did you bring a coat?" he asked. She shook her head. Without thinking, he took off his jacket. Then he paused. The hesitation lingered between them. Thick, charged, unmistakable. He was aware. So was she. He didn't place it over her shoulders. He held it out instead. An offering. She took it. Their fingers met again. This time, neither of them pulled away immediately. The fabric was warm. So was the space between them. "Thank you," she said softly. "You can return it tomorrow," he replied. There was no assumption in his voice. No expectation. But the implication stayed with her all the way home. That night, she didn't sleep well. The jacket hung over the back of her chair. It smelled faintly like him. Clean, understated, expensive in a way that didn't try to impress. She hated how much comfort it gave her. She hated how safe it felt. She folded it carefully before bed, like something fragile. The next day, when she returned it, he smiled. Not wide. Not performative. Just enough. You didn't have to bring it back so quickly, he said. I wanted to, she replied. Their eyes held longer than necessary. Something passed between them then. Not a confession. Not a decision. An acknowledgement. After that, boundaries blurred. Not crossed. Just softened. He walked her partway to the exit sometimes. They stood closer when they talked. Once, when she laughed, surprised by the sound of it herself. His expression changed. Something unguarded flickered there. She felt it in her chest. She started wondering what this was. Not love. Not yet. But it wasn't harmless anymore. Because she was changing. She spoke more softly around him. Chose her words carefully. She wanted to be seen. But not exposed. Desired. But not claimed. That contradiction pulled at her. One afternoon, he asked her to sit with him. Not in an office. Not behind closed doors. Just at a small table near the windows. The city stretched beneath them. He ordered coffee. For both of them. She noticed he remembered how she took it. That detail landed deeper than it should have. They sat in silence for a moment. Comfortable. Dangerously so. I want to be clear, he said finally. Her breath caught. I don't want you to feel pressured, he continued. About anything. She nodded. But the words felt too careful. Too late. Because pressure didn't always come from demands. Sometimes it came from comfort. From safety. From the way someone made the world easier just by standing beside you. When she left that day, she realized something that unsettled her deeply. She was no longer imagining a future without him. Not because he promised one. But because her present already revolved around him. And she wasn't sure when that had happened. By the time she realized how close they had become, distance no longer felt like an option. They didn't name what was happening. Naming it would have made it real. And real things demanded decisions. So they stayed in that space. The one just before truth. The first time he touched her, it wasn't intentional. They were standing near the windows again. Late afternoon lights spilled across the floor, turning the city gold. She was speaking softly, choosing her words the way she always did now. He shifted slightly. His hand brushed her lower back. Not possessive. Not lingering. But unmistakably there. She froze. So did he. The moment stretched, tight, electric, suspended. He didn't move his hand right away. Neither did she. Her body reacted before her mind could catch up. A quiet inhale. A subtle lean, almost imperceptible. Then he stepped back. I'm sorry, he said. But his voice had changed. Lower. Rougher. She shook her head. It's okay. And that was the lie that stayed with her. After that, the air between them shifted. Every conversation carried weight. Every silence felt loaded. She noticed how he watched her now, not constantly, not obviously, but with attention that lingered a second too long. When she walked away, she could feel his gaze. When she spoke, she felt him listening, not just to her words, but to what she wasn't saying. That kind of focus felt intimate. Claiming. One evening, he asked her to stay after her shift. Not alone. Not behind closed doors. Just, stay. They sat together as the building emptied out. The city outside glowed with movement and distance. A reminder of lives they weren't living. He poured her a glass of water. Their fingers touched again. This time, neither of them apologized. She could feel the heat between them now. Constant, steady, undeniable. "I think about you," he said suddenly. The honesty startled her. Not because of the words, but because of how carefully he said them. Not demanding. Not dramatic. Just, true. She swallowed. "Me too," she admitted. Saying it felt like crossing a line she couldn't redraw. He leaned closer. Close enough that she could count his breaths. Close enough that stepping away would have required effort. He didn't kiss her. That restraint felt louder than action. She wondered then what would happen if he did. If she would stop him. If she wanted him to. The answer scared her. From that point on, she noticed how much of her world revolved around him. She waited for his messages, not frequent, but meaningful. She adjusted her schedule without realizing why. When she imagined her future, he was there. Not as a fantasy. As a constant. That was when she understood the danger. Because she wasn't choosing him. She was adjusting herself around him. The opportunity came quietly. A different job. Independent work. Less stable. Less protected. But hers. The kind of step she'd promised herself she'd take someday. She told him about it carefully. Watching his face. He listened. Then hesitated. Just for a moment. "That's risky," he said. Not wrong. But not neutral. The room felt smaller after that. He didn't forbid her. Didn't threaten. Didn't even try to persuade her outright. He just made staying sound easier. Safer. And she realized, with a tightening in her chest, that his comfort had become a kind of gravity. The night before her decision, they stood close again. Too close. His hand hovered near hers. She could feel the question between them. If they crossed that line, everything would change. Not equally. Never equally. She stepped back. "I need to do this," she said softly. His jaw tightened. "I know," he replied. But his eyes said something else. Something selfish. Something human. They didn't touch again. That was the mercy. That was the cruelty. She left without drama. No scene. No promises. Just absence. Months later, she still remembered how he made her feel. Safe. Seen. Desired. And she understood now that those feelings had been real. But so had the imbalance. So had the cost. Some loves don't break you because they're cruel. They break you because they almost let you forget who you were. If this story stayed with you longer than you expected, you're not alone. Some connections feel real. Even when they were never equal. If you've ever loved someone who made your life easier, but quietly smaller, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. And if stories like this speak to you, subscribe for more quiet, complicated love stories.